So let's create ourselves a Gen Z friendly workspace. Now, uh, let's just start off first of all that we get this this common impression that the current generation, this young generation that we're facing right now, are the quote unquote the millennials. Let's get that notion out the window right away. The millennials are not Generation Z. When we call these young teenagers or college students millennials, that's absolutely wrong. They are not the millennials. They are Gen Z. Now, Gen Z are those kids born that from 1996 to 2010. Okay, so we're looking at kids now that are approximately 20, 21, 22 years old, and they are the children of Generation X. They're my kids. Okay, so those born between 65 and 79, their kids are what's known as Gen Z. In between the two, Generation Y, or what we now recognize as the millennials. Okay, and so next up, well, when we talk about the millennials, what are they really like? Who are they? And this is just really a rough overview of who they are. But if you'll notice the infographic, okay? Notice, for instance, 87%, that's just about here in the middle, 87% work out more than once a week. So they're kind of health conscious. They're very conscious, maybe not their health, but at least, probably more vain. And 50% of millennials cook 4+ times a week. So this is not so much the going out. They like to do things on their own. 70% value a purposeful career over a salary. And that's huge. That's very important to note. 75% check multiple social media. They're the Tinder generation. 42% said that marriage was important. They still do face-to-face things when they don't do ghosting. And 80%, this is very important, 80% don't think that they should be expected to respond to emails on weekends or at night. So this would point out and correlate to your 87% that say that they work out, they care for themselves. It's more of a work-life balance thing going on. Those are the millennials. These guys are now roughly 18 to 35 years old nowadays. Now, so who are these millennials? Who are these Gen Zs that we are now going to be talking about? Okay, just a quick overview. Anyone born after 1995, described as conscientious, hardworking, and mindful of the future, and they're the first true digital natives. At the bottom, what should employees or employers know about Gen Z? Okay, giving back comes first, which means that purpose, just like Gen X or just like Gen Y, is very important to them. Why are they doing things? Not just usually for the money. Gen Z is a dream job. They are very idealistic. And career growth counts a lot. Okay, Gen Z knows that it's a very competitive marketplace, and they know that they need to really build themselves up on a very personal level to succeed or to continue on or thrive rather in a modern workplace. Okay, so let's look at let's summarize all of these things in a nutshell. So this is a side-by-side between millennials and Gen Z. Okay, millennials are optimists versus Gen Zs that are realists. Okay, they know what's out there, they know what's going on. It's not that they don't hope for the best, but they're very practical people. Uh, Millennials are tech savvy, which means they had grown up with both the computer screen and the TV screen. They're very comfortable with technology, but Gen Z is tech innate. They grew up in a world that was covered with internet. They do not know what a pre-internet age looks or feels like. And they have 5 screens going on simultaneously. These 5 screens are the TV, the mobile phone, laptop, desktop computers, and the tablets. Now, they may not literally have them all open at the same time, but these different formats have different experiences, and they are innate. They know how these individual platforms work and how they affect their experiences. Millennials have decision-making power, which means they make a choice and they follow it, while Gen Zs are more influential. This means that they are either molded into a decision or influence others into a decision. Millennials want to be discovered. Gen Z wants to work for success. They want to earn their way there. Millennials are focused on the present. Gen Z is focused on the future. One generation are spenders, the other one are savers. And millennials communicate through text, while Gen Z communicates with symbols and images. So let's just allow that to simmer right there. And if there are any questions, by the way, please feel free to ask. Just raise your hand. I lowered all the hands right now, which means if anybody hands, or please pop up your question box, and then we will see those questions and I can address them. Okay, so if everyone's ready, I'd like to take you now on a more detailed Y versus Z comparison, and this is more specifically with regard to a workplace setting. So let's start off. Millennials, you'll see here, don't just work for a paycheck, they want a purpose. And Gen Zs are very similar in the same respect, that although, of course, money, employment is a motivator, they do want to make a difference, okay? But surviving and thriving are more important. Now, take note that Gen Z is just starting to enter the marketplace now. They're just starting to get there. These are guys that are that had just finished college, maybe 2, 3 at oldest. They've been out of college for about 3 or 4 or 5 years. So yes, they want a good job. They want some job security, but surviving and thriving in an industry is much more important. Now, they aren't pursuing satisfaction. They're pursuing their own development. These are for the millennials. Now, while the Gen Z wants to accumulate rewarding experiences, they also want instant feedback, and satisfaction are key. Now, you have to understand, ladies and gentlemen, that a lot of my insights here, although backed up by literature, comes from actually teaching these kids right now. Gen Z, these are my students right now. And I have seen over the past decade how they react and how they thrive or fail in the workplace as they enter the industry. So next thing is, millennials don't want bosses, they want coaches. Same thing with Gen Z. They want to be mentored in an environment where they can advance quickly. But they want honesty and transparency. They don't want equal footing with their leaders or their coaches or their bosses, but they want to be able to talk to them as a colleague, as a professional. Gen Z does not thrive in a very hierarchical this framework or system where they do not have a voice, especially at the entry-level position. And I'll discuss more of that later on. They don't want annual reviews, for instance. They want ongoing conversations. The millennials are like that. And again, the Gen Z is kind of similar, that they don't want an annual work assessment. They want to be mentored, given feedback on an ongoing, frequent, or daily basis. Now, it may sound tedious. Every day you're giving them feedback. But what we have to think, or we have to realize, is what we want is, again, an ongoing conversation. Okay, the millennials and the Gen Z are very similar in both respects of how they look at that. Now, I have a couple of hands up here. Where are those hands that are raised? Victoria Dadivas and AV Amor Bautista. Do you have questions? If there are questions, please feel free to put them into the question box. That way we can all address them. Bianca said, I can't hear the speaker. You might be muted, Bianca. There we go. So, moving on, everything is good. Victoria the Divas, yes, you have a question? You have a question, right? Oh, you've been raised for 15 minutes. Okay, we'll put down all the hands. Excellent. Let's move on. Okay, now, moving on, millennials don't want to fix their weaknesses. They want to develop their strengths. It's kind of interesting, okay? They don't want to fix their weaknesses. They want to develop their strengths, which can be both positive or negative, the way you look at it. Now, Gen Z believe that there are winners and losers, and more people fall into the losing category. They want to have the tools to win, either through developing uh, or by bettering themselves. Okay. Now, what this basically just means, ladies and gents, is that a, a Gen Z, being much more pragmatic, being much more practical in their day-to-day dealings with the world, already know that not everyone is going to make it. So what they do is they want to empower themselves. They want to build themselves up so that they they are able to compete, that they give themselves a winning chance or a fighting chance to win. And that can be very important as you develop them or as you nurture them within your own companies. Next up, millennials have a collaborative mentality where everyone pitches in and works together. Now, this is really interesting. Gen Z is very competitive. 72%, it says here in the data, said that they are competitive with doing the same job. They're independent and want to be judged on their own merits and showcase their individual talents. Now, allow me to give you a quick anecdote for this one, and I teach in a film school. Now, I see these guys working individually and working in groups. And it is in their individual projects where you really see the competitive nature come out. They work together. They use each other. They help in each other's projects. They collaborate. But the outputs are pitted against each other. So it's a very friendly competition, yes. But you have to understand that they're coming from a place where they want to show their individual worth. They, they are collaborative. They do help out. They work in teams excellently. But they want to see and excel on their own merit. That they want you to notice their individual prowess, their individual contributions to a team or a project. Millennials, next up, it's not just their job, it's their life. So millennials were the ones that really introduced to us the concept of work-life balance. Baby boomers, especially, these are my parents, and then Gen X, it was work, 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 work. Millennials introduced to us the concept of the work-life balance. Generation Z, on the other hand, actually think that things could be far more simplified. They find the world pretty complicated. So yes, they will work for good salaries. They want good salaries and they want good benefits. But they are also a DIY generation. These are the guys. This is the generation that grew up on online check-ins, online booking, online hotels. They can pull together anything online. So they feel that other generations, millennials, Gen X, baby boomers, have overcomplicated things. So HR people, for instance, most if not all of your HR practitioners, when you give a Gen Z a lot of paperwork, you see how their faces just curl up in loathing and judgment. Too much paperwork, and you can easily say, look, what's your like this? But no, it has to be a 20-page form. So that's what we mean by how previous generations have overcomplicated the workplace. Remember, Gen Z, pragmatic, realist. They know how to get there. They don't need a complicated path. And we just make it more difficult for them. And next, this is again a summary, okay? When the millennials and Gen Z, the differences, and notice in the middle where they are very the same. Difference makers, corporate skepticism. Gen X created the corporate world. Gen Y and Z are very skeptical of the corporate setup. Big business as capitalist monster that is out to destroy the environment, that is out to destroy individuality. They have a personal responsibility, which means that they want to build themselves up and will not wait to be built. And they have an entrepreneurial thinking, which means they've always got that dream business that they want to start up. They've always got that bright idea that they hope will change the world. And of course, technologically savvy. This is a generation that was born into and born through the internet in the digital superhighway. So which means that information, access to convenience, and enabled technologies for them is a natural thing. Okay? Do we have questions so far before I move on to the next topic? No questions coming up? Okay, we have a hand raised here, yes. Maria Victoria de Divas, yes, you have a question, ma'am? No, she doesn't have a question. Okay. Okay, then let's continue. Let's just put all the hands down. All right. So, moving on, ladies and gentlemen. This is something that I wanted to, I separated this specifically because I believe that it's something very important for us to understand about the Gen Z. Gen Z is inclusive. And in this day and age when we're starting to talk about, uh, you know, breaking gender roles and racial barriers and all of these things, Gen Z was born into that. They do not talk about it, they live it. Gen Z comes from from diverse classrooms. Okay, and I'm not just talking about Philippine classrooms. I'm talking about worldwide classrooms. You know, where racial barriers are are non-existent, where you may have rich, middle class, and poor, and OFW families and elite families all within the same uh, confines of their educational system. And this makes for different environments. There are global diasporas, and this means again, you know, a take note that there are Filipino schools in the Middle East, and after they graduate from there, they come to university here in the Philippines, and we have Korean students, we have Chinese students, we have we have students from the Philippines who study in the U.S. So the notion of you're only stuck or you only live and die in the land where you were born is no longer necessarily valid. Gen Z has also been exposed to a a wide uh, a wide a okay, we have a question here. I'm going to answer this in a second. Okay, so they've come to a place where now gender roles have changed. In just the past few years, we went from gay and lesbian to LGBT to LGBTQ, and now it's like LGBTQI. This is within the span of years. So in their generation, the meaning of gender and gender roles has changed significantly and drastically. And to them, they're very gender fluid. To our generations, you are gay, straight, you're gay or straight. To them, that is not necessarily the case. Okay, Lisa, I'll answer your question in a second. Okay, now they are also very personal and have factored a lot of personalization. They deal with you on a face-to-face level. Gen Z wants to be in physical contact with the people that they talk to, but they're also very into personalization. Uh, at the college, for instance, our brightest scholars, our academic scholars, are the ones that have the blue hair or red hair. That's the way they are. They personalize things. They have literally a personal profile pic. And of course, they're very collaborative and they work in this type of borderless environment. They thrive in a borderless environment. Okay, now there's a question here from Lisa Ramos. She says, it seems that Gen Z is focused on their individuality. What is their take on teamwork or collaborative environments in companies? Okay, excellent. Excellent question. I was talking about this. Uh, Actually, Gen Z is very individualistic in terms of their personas. They want to be in this world of Facebook and Twitter and Snapchat. They want to be unique. So that's why you get a lot of personal styles. You get students coming into school with colored hair or wearing cosplay because they want to be personalized. They want to personalize their lives. Although when it comes to teamwork and collaborative environments, they actually thrive. It's because they do understand what their individuality means or what their individuality brings to the table. So they love to work together. What's important in a corporate environment or in a company environment is that we do not limit them to a homogeneous teamwork environment or homogeneous collaborative environment. And what I mean by this is like this, that, okay, everybody in red learn to work together. And this could easily be, okay, all HR people, you will only work with the HR people. All the marketing people, you work with the marketing people. No, Gen Z is quote unquote gender fluid. Gen Z thrives in an environment where you make the marketing guy talk to the artist guy, talk to the painter, work with the HR guy, work with the IT people, work with the technicians, and work with the designers. And because their definitions of competencies have changed drastically compared to our definitions, they are not as black and white as we used to be, where, okay, this guy is a writer and all he or she does is a writer. And this guy is a computer technician and all he does is computer technicians. No, they've become much more fluid and they thrive better in that kind of environment. So I hope that answers your question, Lisa. Okay, shall we move on? There we go. Okay, let's move on. So Gen Z and the workplace. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go through some tips. This is not a very long presentation because I really want to be able to talk about this rather than just lecture about it. I want to hear your questions about them. So Gen Z and the workplace. Mattering versus safety. This is crucial. Now, what do I mean by this? The millennials were into mattering. They want to matter. They want to count. They want that their efforts mean something in the greater scheme of things. Okay? They're like that. Gen Z is after safety. And what's safety? Now, we don't mean safety that they have to work in a, with hard hats. No. What they mean by safety is there is an assurance that what they're doing is correct. There is an assurance that the work that they do matters for something. If they work for a multinational, for instance, they want to know that they're not just being set aside. So there's a secure, nurturing environment that they kind of go into. Versus millennials, which were a little more, they were a little more aggressive. So what happens with a millennial is that, okay, I'm going to work and I'm going to do something that matters. I want people to see me. I want to count. The Gen Z is more of, I'm going to work hard. I'm going to do my thing, but I have to know that I am doing it for a purpose. I am doing it because it matters. I am doing it because you need me to do it. Those types of safety, that kind of security and assurance is what they're after. To have or nurture a Gen Z friendly environment, it's important that companies, that workplaces know how to share and care. And this is what I was talking about, safety, for instance, care. Do we have to literally hold their hands? No. But Gen Z thrives or responds to a workplace where people do share, where people are open, where people, where bosses are approachable, where they get a feel for, okay, what I'm doing here counts, and even if I have to stay up late at night just to finish a project, I know that I'm not gonna get fired for coming in 20 minutes late in the morning. Things like that. You notice that Gen Z needs that emotional bond. This is not our parents' workplaces where you are a time card and an ID number, where 1 minute late gets you fired and 2 minutes overtime is a reason to ask for overtime pay. They will work and they will give themselves in their work, but they have to know that their place of work understands them, gives them opportunities, and gives them a voice. Okay, so they share and they care, and their work environment has to share and has to care as well. Next up is let them own their work. Okay, what we mean by this is that we have to give them a sense of authorship of what they do. Give them a chance to be proud of what they do. Do not make Gen Zs a small cog in a much larger machine. They remember that they have to know that what they do serves a purpose, and giving them the opportunity to own it, which means, okay, look, this is your idea, okay, defend it, and I will defend you with it. or I will give you a chance to run with it, but you prove to me that you can run with this idea. Give them an opportunity to excel on their own. Give them an opportunity to put their little stamp in the project, and you will see the rewards come out very, very soon. Okay. Next up is, as we said earlier, and I've been saying this over and over again, give feedback. Give feedback. They need to know that what they're doing is correct. They need to know what they're doing is for a reason. They need to understand why they're doing things. Don't just let them run and do something, and then next thing you know, you're fired, or you're not doing good enough. No, give them feedback. This is also one flaw of the Gen Z, the tendency to kind of freeze when they don't get feedback. They a lack of self-assurance or confidence in themselves, that they need validation from their superiors or from their peers that what they're doing is correct. So having that in mind, then we have to understand that feedback has to be something that we give them on a regular basis. So far so good? No questions? Another problem with Gen Z is their access to, or their innateness with 5 screens, and this also means that they multitask constantly. Data has shown that millennials have an attention span of 12 seconds. Gen Z has an attention span of 8. That's scary. 8 seconds. These are the guys that have multiple tabs open, multiple devices running at the same time, different functions and processes happening all at the same time. It's your task now as a company or as a workplace environment to eliminate or minimize distractions. Now, this is not about blocking Facebook from the office. That's not that. In fact, that might even be worse. But what we need to do is instill the concept of focus and discipline in Gen Z. Understand that bosses or superiors may need to spend a little extra time making sure that these guys are focused and on track. They will get there. It's just not that habit that they're quote unquote born with. So we have to understand that Gen Zs will be easily distracted, and we need to instill that kind of discipline and focus and one-trackness, so that tasks get accomplished efficiently and effectively. Okay? Oh, we have a question. In giving feedback, same with previous slide, what if their bosses doesn't have the luxury of time to give them regular feedback? Regular feedback as in, okay, very good question. Okay, we don't need a time-consuming feedback mechanism. In fact, if it's routine tasks, doing feedback once or twice does the job, gets the job done. But a Gen Zer needs assurance, needs validation, needs a confirmation that what I'm doing is correct. So they will be the type where you would say, for instance, let me use a film concept. Let's say, to edit a particular sequence or a video clip, for instance, they would be the type who would put it together. You basically give a general instruction. They'll put it together. They'll edit a video together and then kind of show you. And you have to say, okay, this works. This does not work. This is good. This is flawed. Fix it. But once they start doing that video on a regular basis, you do not need to give them feedback continuously for every video of the same type that they're doing. It's just now becomes occasional, and you start saying, hey, okay, you're slipping, it no longer works this way, can you fix this? So it's not necessarily time consuming, but yes, we need to be able to kind of give them a system where they always know what they're doing is right or wrong. If not, they can get stuck. They can freeze because they're afraid to proceed. Right? And we have perhaps Ken Blanchard's 1-minute manager can help. It's possible. It is very possible that it can help. I would suggest rather that probably work from a more personal, kind of try to get empathize with 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 who you're talking to, with the kid, for lack of a better term. Uh, Going with a system, going with a, oh, we'll use the 1 minute manager, and we'll use this kind of system for feedback, for support systems. Uh, how do I put this? It's not necessarily going to be a an answer. It can help. I'm not saying, please don't get me wrong. It can help. The system can help, but I would also caution against going to cookie cutter, templated solutions, because Gen Z, they're not as cookie cutter as we think they are. Okay. We have another question here. So are you saying that Gen Z is more emotional than millennials? Yes, more emotional. But please do not think that when I say emotional that they're more madrama, that they're emo. No, it's they are more empathic. They are more emotionally attuned to what goes on around them. They uh, they for example, they want to work for a company that matters. They 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 will judge a company for its environmental record. For instance, it's like, I'm not going to work for these people. They have bad ethics. When a millennial or even a Gen X, for instance, will say, look, I'm going to work for these guys because they pay good, even if their ethics or their environmental record is sketchy. But no, Gen Z is more empathic that way, and say, no, I cannot work for these people. I cannot work with these people. I cannot work in an environment that's like this. That's why you will get also a lot of quick jumps. Many of you in HR would experience, for example, a Gen Z or a fresh grad staying for 2 or 3 or 4 months, and then, in our opinion, burning out, or in our opinion, quitting because they can't handle it. Look at it from their side. Maybe they don't want us. Maybe they don't want to handle us. Maybe they don't like the way we do things, and it does not resonate with them. Next question we have here. What if the head is not quite good in giving feedback? How can HR help them? Good question. Well, Gen Z heads, there aren't very many of them right now, but uh, what HR can do is establish, I believe, a support system. And I don't mean a help group, but I mean, it's important for HR to understand, especially for Gen Z, that these are very different. These are not the same people that we describe that in the HR books, in the textbooks. This is a totally different animal. And remember also that they thrive in borderless environments. So HR can establish borderlessness, give not necessarily by giving the feedback that the boss should give, but allowing, for instance, for peer evaluations, or allowing for a more communal setting where personal validations can happen in an informal setting. Things like that would be very helpful from an HR perspective. Next question is, so therefore, as an HR, you need an environment that will be considered to be an extension of their home, where they can feel worthy as a person, same time being directed them. Good question. Extension of their home. Not extension of the home, but an extension of a place where they feel, where they can be themselves, like school. So if they feel home in the sense that I'm safe, that I feel secure, that I know that what I'm doing matters. School in the sense that I know where my place is in society. I know what my strengths are, and I know what my weaknesses are, and I know who my friends and my superiors are. So they feel now that they can contribute, that they can be part of something, that they are not the invisible, the invisible pieces and pawns while the gods make their moves. No, it's they work better in open spaces, for instance, rather than working in cubicles. Things like that, it's they know where everything is in the world. I hope that makes sense. That one makes sense. It's the divas. Okay, so I think everybody's digesting the answers. Okay, sorry, we have one text. The usual, they're the leaders and superiors now. Millennials and Gen Z. Wow, okay. How do we integrate context? Okay, I think it's very important that we understand how each of them work and how they function, what what triggers them, for instance, little things like that. So it's not, again, it's not changing your corporate policies just because you now have a younger crowd. I think it's understanding how they react to our systems. So we do understand, for example, a Gen X, a 45, 50-year-old manager, or vice president. What do they need? What do they want? How do they react in the world? Then the line managers, the frontline superiors right now would be your millennials. And what are they? They're go-getters. They want to matter, which means that these guys are going to prove themselves day in and day out. Gen Z, they want to play in a team. They want to know that they matter. They want to know that they're not just pawns, in a chess game. So once that system is in place, then HR, I think, is really going to be able to create programs, create systems, change the work environment so that it allows these individuals to thrive. Let's say a millennial needs structure, a Gen X needs structure, a millennial needs opportunity, and Gen Z needs validation. Then we create that. We understand that we need, okay, there will be a structure so that our bosses understand what's going on. Our frontliners need flexibility, for instance. They need a place, they need to be able to develop their own systems and react to audiences or markets or customers or consumers. And then Gen Z needs to be able to create on their own. They need, okay, your team does this thing, and then you lead in that. They need authorship. They need ownership of their work. And I think you're going to be able to have a more responsive HR environment with that. Okay, so let's move on to the next one. But please keep those questions coming. All right, next thing that we do this is good. This is a good takeoff from the Gen XYZ question earlier. Foster community, push face-to-face, and give them their own voice. These are three different aspects, and I want to bundle them on. First of all, foster community, create community. This is not the corporate family concept that we all put in our mission vision statements. No, it's real community. Not a company of boss and followers, of presidents and vice presidents and managers and whatnot. Community of people. People that do things, people that want to change things, people that want to serve. It's the same hierarchy, but you change the context and you change the language and you change the methodology of how culture is created in the company, and you will see these Gen Zs thrive. Remember what I said earlier, okay? They want to matter. They want to be able to see their bosses eye to eye, their superiors, and give their feedback or receive feedback. Also increase face-to-face. Because of the access Gen Z has to technology, they actually want face-to-face. They want feedback face-to-face. They want relationships face-to-face. They want meetings to be face-to-face. Because now they start to empathize. They start to connect on an emotional level. They see if you're angry. They can see if you're frustrated. They can see if you're rallying the troops to hit the next sales target. And those things do not come in an email, do not come in a Facebook chat. And last is give them their own voice. Gen Z comes from a voice empowered generation. they post what they want and what they feel on Facebook, on Snapchat, on Twitter. Give them a voice in the company. Give them a chance to speak in meetings. If I'm not saying talk to the president, but I'm saying give them a chance to voice out their opinions and how they feel and how they react to certain things. Okay? Good question here. We have from Lisa Ramos again. Is it really necessary to adjust our workplace for millennials or Gen Z people? Allow me to return the question for you. What's the composition of your company today? How many people comprise your 35-year-old age group? Your 40-year-olds, that's Gen X. Well, 50-year-olds are your Gen X. Your millennials are your 35-year-olds, which means that right now, how many fresh grads do you employ? Next year, how many fresh grads will you employ? And the year after that? Which means in how many years will your company be populated by today's generation? If your company doesn't adjust, how will it respond? How will it grow? How will it evolve to meet the needs of changing things? Because today we're just talking about Gen Z. There is a generation that has just been born that is going to be ready for the workplace in 20 years. And that's Generation Alpha. Who is going to respond to Generation Alpha? Is it us? Is it the millennials? Or is it Gen Z? So the answer to the question really is, how much longer do you think you can not change the work environment for millennials or Gen Z? Okay. Next question here is it more advantageous that we adjust to Gen Z's environment and attitude? I'll be very honest. Yes. I teach Gen Z. Okay, this is not a workplace, it's a school, but when we adjusted our teaching methodologies, when we shifted our the language we use, the methods we use, the styles that we use in the classroom management techniques that we use to respond to how they act and they respond, the students thrive. So if you want maximum performance from your Gen Zs, your fresh grads, your young upstarts, give them that opportunity to grow, to act, to own their work, to give them the flexibility to excel. And it will pay you back. It will pay you back. The Gen Z, I think a lot of my audience now are millennials. Gen Z will change the world. You know why? Because they blame my generation for destroying it. My generation destroyed the baby boomers, and my generation destroyed the earth. They want to change it. They want it back. So if by giving them that chance, we will have a better future. Ms. Erica Absolute has a question. I think what HR can do is to provide trainings or seminars to departments, heads, and bosses, yes, about the importance and benefits of giving feedback to Gen Z employees. Both parties need to adjust in order to retain good employees. Please do correct me. I will not correct you because you are not wrong. Yes, change should not just come from the bottom or HR changing things just so that the Gen Zs are happy. No. The bosses at the very top have to understand what these new animals are like, what these new creatures are like, what makes them happy, what makes them sad, how do they thrive, how do they function, what makes them tick, what makes them happy, what makes them sad. And it's just like our own kids. We know that our kids are going to be happy if we bring home ice cream, diba? Oh. And we know that if we tell our little children, the young ones, we say, "Oh, I'll bring it to Jollibee," and then they'll behave. What's different from how does that differ from a corporate structure? Oh, do your homework, and then we will go to the park. Then it's the same thing. The bosses understand that, okay, they need pala to go to the park every now and then. O sige, do your homework, well, then we'll all go to the park. Hindi maayos. Okay? Moving on. Okay. In line with all of this, give your Gen Z space to grow. Okay? This is not just professional development. There's a personal development to this. And of course, HR, you guys are at the forefront of making sure that they grow professionally. And then that That's still vital. Okay, do not forget that. But this is going to be a little out of the box. Is you actually let them grow personally. And when I say personally, is we give them the flexibility, we give them the room to try things out. Sometimes it's a personal project. Sometimes it's a dream thing. Sometimes it's as simple as letting the young guys decide on how the Christmas party is going to be run. The gimmicks and the everything. You know, give them a chance to try things out because they grow, they learn. Gen Z is not your note-taking generation anymore. You know, they listen, they have a screen open, they type into their laptops in classrooms. Iba na sila. So how they learn and what they absorb when they learn is still beyond our comprehension. And we have to give them that opportunity to absorb. If we lock them into a very strict, regimented environment, they will not grow. And they just become workers that pasweldo lang, you know, and they will not thrive and we won't get anything out of them. We have another question here. Can you cite some HM programs that can be considered as proof of concept? Good question. Sige nga. Sorry, Ms. Militante, what proof of concept, for instance, would you like in particular? Which context? Let's just wait for her to read. Ms. Maricor Militante? So she asked here, can you cite some HR programs? Finding meaning in the workplace, finding meaning in the workplace, finding meaning in the workplace. TBWA, this is an advertising agency that does digital material, and they recently opened a new digital wing, an all digital wing, or the all digital department, and they hired a bunch of fresh graduates to do that. And now this is advertising. So if you're familiar with advertising, anyone who's familiar with advertising, you understand that there is that advertising agencies, the advertising executives, regardless of their intelligence and brilliance, sits very low in the totem pole of the corporate ladder, which means that on top of them are marketing executives from businesses and the bosses and their bosses and global headquarters and all of that. But TBWA actually works, you know, they have a very strict structure pa rin. They have creative directors and they have creative directions, and you cannot deviate very much from that. But beyond that, beyond this, the guidelines that must be followed, they give a lot of freedom for these young creatives to create. So it allows now the worker, this young worker, to develop and actually feel like they own the project. They own what they were, and you know, this is my work. I made this. It works before, you know, it's mine, you know. So there's a sense of pride, and these fresh grads are thriving in a very competitive environment. But even considering that in terms of conceptual experience, they have almost none, because they're given a chance to create. They're given a chance to own their work. They're given a chance to voice and be part of the creative process, to think on their own. They're given some level of responsibility, and they thrive in that kind of environment. Okay, so I hope that works, Ms. Maricor. Another question here: if the 4-day work policy will be implemented, what do you think is the effect of Gen Z if you're saying that they are more into face-to-face? Work from home will not be effective to Gen Z compared to millennials. Okay, yes, that's true. Working from home is okay. Yung Gen Z can still work from home because they're really good with the technology, which means if we give them the systems to work with, they're great with that. The problem is, no, a 4-day work week I think will make them work even better. Not because you're removing 1 day of face-to-face. It's because you're now focusing. Okay, guys, we need to get this done in a 4-day work week, diba? Tapos na yung trabaho natin in 4 days. And then you have a 3-day weekend to do your thing, to do your personal projects, personal growth, to attend seminars and whatnot. So I'm not saying that you're moving at one day face to face, but I think you're focusing, so they will thrive better. Keep the face to face there. What I mean by face to face uh, is not always meeting a meeting, but instead of doing online meetings, they would prefer having a face to face meeting rather than online. Instead of, for example, a webinar, they would actually prefer a face to face seminar. They absorb that better. Ganun sila. Okay. So, okay, yeah. Do we have more questions here? No, okay. You're very welcome, Ms. Maricor. Now let's move on. This was surprising, even in my research. Gen Z, being a very pragmatic, very practical generation, find a lot of meaning in meaningful benefits. It's not just the salary. It's not just how much you pay them. It's what you provide for them. You've heard about Google Classroom, Google Offices. You've heard about my mga bean bags and bars and ping pong tables and all of that. You know who those are for? Those are for the millennials. The millennials thrive, need those perks. Nagre-respond ang millennial to perks like a ping pong table or there's a refrigerator with ice cream in the office lagi. They respond to that. Gen Z does not respond as strongly to that. In fact, they think those are gimmicks. What they're looking for are meaningful benefits. Do you have dental? Do they have medical benefits? Do they have, is there overtime pay or not overtime pay? If there's no overtime pay, then is there an offset? How about my vacation time? You have to understand also that millennials will travel. They will travel. As soon as they can afford it, they will travel. So they are going to look for the ability to move, to transport themselves elsewhere. So if your job offer means that they get to travel, they're yours. If your job allows them, for example, the flexibility that, hey boss, kasi nag-seat sale sa Cebu Pacific and I disappeared to Japan for the weekend, and they say, okay, as long as you're done with that, as long as we can deliver to the client before deadline, then you go fly. They will, you see, they respond to those things. So look at your benefits packages and know that it's not just about money. It's about everything that you offer. It's not the amount, it's the value. It's a total value. They can even pay them less than they would get in another company, but if they feel that they will thrive better, that you will get more out of it on an emotional or a personal level, lots of extra training, extra opportunities to create, to lead, responsibilities, they will join you. I have a small anecdote. One of my brightest graduates, this girl was a scholar since high school and college, full scholarship. So, she can have any job she wants. She does work for an NGO, not because they pay better, but simply because she feels that what she does makes a difference. She is a creator and not a nameless flunky in a company. She is given a responsibility to run a project and create her project on her own. When a bigger company, a network, for instance, would just tell her literally what to do, and she had to follow that to the letter. And that's how she is. That's what the Gen Zer is. Getting that sort of freedom, that sort of flexibility to thrive. And then this is very crucial. Discuss the meaning. I keep on saying that Gen Z wants to be part of something. They want to know that what they're doing matters in the world. So discuss with them the meaning of what they do. Now, if you were an NGO, it's obvious, our meaning is to do this, to help the poor, to do this, to do that. What if you're a bank? What if you're a manufacturing company like Procter & Gamble or Unilever? What's the meaning in what they do? I think what's important here is they understand whatever it is that they make, whether it is a poster, whether they are a sales clerk, whether they are a marketing assistant, they understand what they do contributes to a greater of a whole. what the purpose of what they're doing is. Gen Z will move when they know what their purpose is. Okay? So if you discuss with them the meaning of what it is that they do, they will rally around you. They will gather around you. So if if you hire a Gen Z payroll clerk, but then they understand that the overtime that they put in turns into, you know, the maintenance crew being able to take their family to Jollibee for the weekend, then they will thrive. But if they don't understand the context of what they're doing, gawa lang sila ng gawa, utos lang ng utos si boss, they will not thrive. They will leave you. Okay? And next up, okay, this is I think my last slide, if I'm not mistaken. Treat Gen Z right, and your reward will be loyalty, performance, and creativity. I want to emphasize that last word, creativity. And I've been saying about the create all afternoon. And some of you may be saying, oh, I work in a bank. Oh, kailangan namin ng accounting people. Wala namang creative sa accounting. Well, wala talaga. Pero, okay, so it's a joke. Accounting people there, relax lang. Gen Z, because of their access to Instagrams and Snapchats, because of their access to photos from around the world and tools and their multidisciplinariness, and their friends are from other programs and other courses, are very creative. Not necessarily artistic, but creative. They like to solve problems. They like to come up with new designs. They like to come up with new ideas. And I think it's very important that companies, not just HR, companies, embrace creativity. Embrace that ability for a person to come up with an idea, new or innovative, an idea that can very well change the way the company goes. It may work, it may not work, but Gen Zs are innately creative. They are always generating an idea. And maybe that's why they're also sometimes very difficult to pin down. They're very difficult to put into that little box that we have defined for them, for people, for generations. It's it's really about giving them chances. And I have seen it, and I've proven it over and over again, that despite the flaws of the millennial generation, I think Gen Z has the makings of a generation that will really change the world. Okay? So with that, if there are questions from the group, I'd like to open this up. Questions? Let's pop this out. There we go. What is the meaning of loyalty for Gen Z now? Is it something we should expect from them? Yes, you can expect loyalty, but I think these upcoming generations do not give loyalty the same way that for example, Gen X, my generation, defined loyalty. They believe in purpose. Their loyalty is to purpose and to a cause. They will remain loyal to you as long as they believe in you. Okay, this goes back to the earlier question about their being more emotional. Yes, they're more empathic. So if they believe in you, they will be loyal to you. The pitfall, of course, there, the danger, of course, there is if we betray them, they will take their loyalty elsewhere. So our definition of loyalty, let's say in HR, is will they stay for 25 years? I don't want to bank on that. Do not take that to the bank. But if your definition of loyalty is will they work and will they put their heart and soul into my work, if you take care of them, they will give you that. Any other questions? Everyone else still there? Baka nakatulog na kayong lahat. Huh?
Maybe they're just typing the questions.
That's not a problem.
We're thinking about a logical, I guess, no?
Okay.
So
Let's see what else. Yep, anyone else? Oh, what do you think is the advantage of Gen Z on millennials? Uh, How do I encapsulate this? Gen Z, as I said, they're the children of Gen Xers, okay? And Gen X was a Gen X inherited an Earth that they kind of had to fix and work with. So Gen Z were kids that were born during the economic crisis, okay? They were the ones that were born during 9/11. So their worldviews are not as idealistic as the millennials. They get that from their parents. You know, the parents were like, no, no. You know, don't spend too much. Huwag kang magastos masyado. Because money doesn't grow on trees. While millennials, for instance, you know, they're like, hey, YOLO. Okay? So I think they're much more practical. They're much more down to earth. Gen Z, I think, is much more down to earth, all things considered, compared to a typical millennial. And that could be their advantage. Mas grounded sila, mas practical. So they don't need flashy things. They need purpose. Okay? They're almost hippie-like. You know, purpose, change the world, do something that matters, do something that will help, rather than, hey, you know, gagwapo ba ako dito? Hindi ganun yun. Sisikat ba ako? Hindi sila ganun. Why to keep the interest of the Gen Z to the company, especially if their attention span is that short? Because, Miss Jocelyn, because they are incredibly creative. Because if we embrace the innate power of a Gen Zer, that creativity, that natural collaborativeness, that concept of there are no borders, diba? Yung ang judgmentalness ng Gen Z is less among themselves. They judge everything outside, but between themselves. To them, for instance, there is less barrier of rich and poor, gay and straight, black and white. So we can leverage that. They are more natural as a people, as a generation than we ever were. So it's important that the company really takes that, you know, kahit attention span, alam mo yung attention spans na yan, we can work with that. Again, we as older people, we just overcomplicate things sa kanila. Maybe we should take a note from them, simplify, streamline, get to the point fast. We have another question here. We are always looking into studying Gen Z, but how do they view other generations? As I said, Miss Joanna, we overcomplicate things. We binugulo natin ang buhay. To them, things can be very simple. Yes, there is a fault with that. Minsan naman ang simplistic, di ba? Sa kanila, di ba, either go Duterte or no Duterte sila. Yung may ganon. It's kasi simple. Sometimes they do fail to understand the nuances, the complexity of problems, but that's also our fault kasi ginulo natin. Pag tayo mismo, when we take steps back, we understand, oo nga no, ganun lang pala kasimple yun. Yes ba or no? Bakit ang dami mong iba't ibang klaseng maybe? Tayo lang lumagawa ng the older ones. So, for them, nakakagulo tayo sa mundo. Simple lang ang buhay. Pwede nating simplehin, pero hindi natin ginagawa. Okay, thank you very much, Tess Segundo, for the comment. And in the most succinct manner, how do we sustain inspiring, retaining the Gen Z? Also, no, give them room to grow. That's probably the best thing. Give them room to grow, to create, to work, to thrive. If they say something, let's listen. Okay, they might have something going on there. If they, um, if they, if they ask, let's answer. If they come up with an idea, let's see. It just might work. Okay. If it sounds crazy, but as they say, if it's stupid but it works, but if it's stupid but it works, then it's not stupid. Diba? And sometimes these Gen Zs come up with some really crazy ideas. Some tips how to bridge the gap among the different generations in the workplace. It's really information. It's empathy. This is for Michelle's question. Uh, Build a culture of empathy. Understand other people. Understand where they come from. Understand why they say things. Create community. Not forced. You know, it's not you cheering or team. That's not necessarily like that. But build community. Remove borders. Lessen borders. Lower the cubicle walls. Things like that. Uh, I showed you all of my photos, most of my photos in workplaces, for instance. You notice walang cubicles? They like that. They thrive in that. And sometimes it's by taking down the cubicles that allow people to start to collaborate with each other, to live with each other. There are advantages. So of course, that means buying new furniture. But now, sige, create community. Chill. Let people move around in the workplace. Let them talk. Let them be human. Any other questions, ladies and gentlemen? You're very welcome, Ms. Michelle. Any other questions? I just have a question for you guys, and you can just pop that into the. Let's put the poll. Let's do a poll. Give a second, Melvin. Okay. Select the poll. Oh, there's pre-made polls, so you have to. I don't want to make one. Okay, let's do it. Well, then let's just do a show of hands, okay? Real quick. Are you? And let's be very honest here. I will not judge you, okay? As an HR practitioner, are you afraid of Gen Z? Raise your hand if the answer is yes. If you are an HR professional, raise your hand if you are afraid of Gen Z. Okay, so we have people raising and lowering their hand. That's interesting. Okay. If you're afraid of them, I think it's a matter of understanding. If you're not afraid of them, then you should be. It's going to be easy to forget. It's going to be easy to forget that these guys, fresh grads, 21, 22-year-olds, okay, 23, 24-year-olds, will take over our jobs before we know it. So, are we building them? Are we propping them up? Are we developing them into something or someone that will do good in the future? Or are we trying to force them into the molds and cookie cutters that we built for generations? There is a lot of power, ladies and gentlemen, in those Gen Zs. A lot. And especially if you're in a corporation that requires people. Okay? We have to know how to take care of them, upon them, how to use them to our advantage. That sounds so mercenary, but if we do not leverage on the power of the Gen Z, we will be overtaken. Our corporations, our mega corporations, will be taken down by startups that have 10, 15, 20 people. 10, 15, 20 people that leverage on the power of the individual Gen Z in their companies. If we turn our Gen Zs into messengers and coffee mixers and janitors, and we are doing a generation a disservice, and we are actually crippling our own businesses. Okay? So let's be afraid of letting them go. Let's be afraid of not taking care of Gen Z because they are the future. Let's not make the same mistakes that we made with the millennials. Okay? There's a lot of power there in those kids. We just have to believe in them and allow them to shine. Okay? So if that is all, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for listening today. I hope it was worth something to you, and I hope you learned something. Melvin, so anytime. So if there's anything else, ladies and gentlemen, please feel free. You can just email me, jaggarcia at gmail.com if you have other questions, and we'll see how we can address those. Okay? Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.